The cafe was a small, unassuming pocket of warmth nestled between two towering giants of finance and commerce. It smelled of freshly brewed coffee, toasted sourdough, and the simple, honest labor of a day just beginning. Marcus Thorne sat at a table near the window, the polished leather of his briefcase a stark contrast to the worn wooden chair. He was a man accustomed to the view from the top, a senior vice president whose world was a carefully curated landscape of quarterly reports, shareholder meetings, and ruthless efficiency. Beside him, his 6-year-old daughter, Chloe, swung her feet, meticulously coloring in a picture of a unicorn. He was on dad duty, a role he cherished, but one that often felt like another high-stakes project to manage. His wife had passed 3 years ago, and since then, his life had become a fortress of routine and ambition, built to protect his daughter and himself from the chaos of vulnerability. He ordered Chloe a lavish, chocolate-drizzled pastry, a small indulgence that made her eyes sparkle. As she took her first delighted bite, his gaze drifted across the cafe and settled on a woman sitting alone. She was absorbed in a paperback book, its spine so creased it threatened to fall apart. Beside her on the table sat the cafe's $5 lunch special, a simple sandwich on a plain napkin. Her clothes were unremarkable, a faded gray cardigan over a t-shirt, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She possessed a quiet, focused stillness, but Marcus's mind, conditioned to categorize and assess, saw only a lack of drive, a life lived in the shallow end. He leaned towards Chloe, his voice a low conspiratorial murmur, not meant to be cruel, but born of a deep-seated belief in a world divided into winners and the rest. A faint, almost unconscious smirk touched his lips. "See that, sweetie," he whispered. "That's a good lesson. You have to work very hard in life, so you can choose whatever you want from the menu." He never saw the woman's shoulders tense. He never noticed the way her fingers tightened on the edge of her book, her concentration broken. Eleanor Vance, known for the week as Lena, a temporary data entry clerk, heard every word. She didn't look up. She didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. She simply took a slow bite of her sandwich, the taste of his casual judgment more bitter than the cheap coffee she was drinking. This was exactly why she was here. As the new, secret owner and CEO of the very company where Marcus Thorne worked, she had decided to spend her first week on the ground floor, observing the culture she had just acquired. His comment, a casual drop of poison in the morning air, told her more than any corporate report ever could. But Chloe, ever the innocent observer, looked from her fancy pastry to the woman with the book. "But Daddy," she said, her voice filled with a child's simple clarity, "her book looks really loved. Maybe she likes that sandwich the best." Marcus's smirk wavered, the simple logic of his daughter's words momentarily disarming him. He glanced at the woman again, but she was already closing her book, her face a mask of serene neutrality. She stood, collected her things, and walked out of the cafe, leaving behind nothing but the faint scent of coffee and the quiet, damning echo of his own arrogance. He didn't know it yet, but he had just failed his first performance review with his new boss. On Monday morning, the 42nd floor of Vantage Tech was a hive of controlled, high-stakes energy. This was Marcus Thorne's domain, and he ran it with the precision of a military commander. Eleanor Vance, now in her guise as Lena Petrova, was a ghost in this polished machine. Her temporary desk was in a forgotten corner, piled high with the digital and physical detritus that a fast-moving department left in its wake. She was tasked with organizing and archiving, a job so menial it rendered her invisible. And that was precisely the point. From her overlooked vantage point, Eleanor saw everything. She saw Marcus in his element, a brilliant, demanding leader who could command a room with a few sharp words. He was respected, even feared, by his team. They scurried to meet his exacting standards, their faces a mixture of admiration and anxiety. But she also saw the cracks in his armor. Mid-afternoon, his phone would ring with a cheerful, childlike ringtone that was completely at odds with his stern demeanor. He would retreat into his glass-walled office, and through the soundproofed panes, she could see him transform. His shoulders would relax, his harsh expression would soften into a gentle smile, and he would laugh, a silent, joyful laugh, as he talked to his daughter. The contrast was startling. The ruthless executive was also a loving, devoted father. The complexity of him was more compelling than she had anticipated. Her first opportunity to be more than just a piece of furniture came on Wednesday. A critical server containing years of market research data crashed just hours before a major strategy meeting. The IT department was in a panic, talking about days, not hours, for a full recovery. Marcus was pacing his office like a caged lion, his face a mask of cold fury. While the experts debated and deflected, Eleanor slipped away to the server room. She had built her first company on her ability to see patterns in chaos, to find the single line of broken code in a symphony of data. In 20 minutes of quiet, focused work, she had bypassed the corrupted sector, isolated the core data, and restored the system. She slipped back to her desk just as a relieved cheer went up from the IT department. They took the credit, of course. But Marcus's head of IT, a man who knew a miracle when he saw one, pulled him aside and pointed a discreet finger in Eleanor's direction. "The temp," he whispered. "She's the one who fixed it." Later that day, Marcus approached her desk, a look of grudging respect in his eyes. "I heard what you did, Lena. Thank you. You saved the day." "Happy to help," she said, her tone neutral, her eyes focused on the spreadsheet in front of her. "How did you know how to do that?" he pressed, intrigued. She gave a small shrug. "I like puzzles." He stood there for a moment longer, searching for something more, but she offered him nothing. She was a closed book, and he found himself inexplicably wanting to read the pages. He was impressed by her skill, but he still saw it as an anomaly, a surprising talent in an otherwise unremarkable package. He still didn't see her. That would take someone with a clearer, more honest perspective. That would take Chloe. The call came on Thursday, a frantic message from the nanny who was stuck in traffic across town. Marcus had a non-negotiable conference call with their Tokyo investors in 30 minutes. There was no other option. He had to bring Chloe back to the office with him after her dentist appointment. He set her up in the corner of his office with her tablet and a stern warning to be as quiet as a mouse. Chloe, for her part, tried her best. But the allure of a sprawling office with its endless hallways and intriguing corners was too much for a curious 6-year-old to resist. While Marcus was deep in a discussion about market penetration in the Asian sector, Chloe slipped out of his office on a secret mission. Her adventure led her to the quiet, brightly lit file room where Lena was working, surrounded by towers of binders. Chloe peered around the doorframe, her eyes wide. Eleanor looked up from her work and a warm, genuine smile spread across her face, a stark contrast to the polite, professional masks worn by everyone else on this floor. "Well, hello there, secret agent," she said softly. "What mission are you on?" Chloe giggled, her shyness melting away under the warmth of Eleanor's gaze. "I'm escaping from the boring kingdom," she whispered dramatically. Eleanor played along. "An excellent mission. But even the best agents need a sidekick." She pulled out a small notepad and a pen. "Can you help me draw a map to the treasure?" For the next half hour, the sterile file room became a world of fantasy. They drew maps of imaginary lands, complete with dragons, talking animals, and, at Chloe's insistence, a unicorn who loved chocolate croissants. Eleanor had a gift for storytelling, for seeing the world through a child's eyes. Chloe, who was often reserved and quiet, chattered and laughed with an uninhibited joy that was a rare and precious sound. When Marcus's call finally ended, he emerged from his office to find Chloe gone. A surge of parental panic shot through him. He followed the faint sound of giggling down the hall and stopped dead in the doorway of the file room. The sight that greeted him was both confusing and deeply moving. His daughter, his quiet, introspective Chloe, was sitting on the floor, her head resting on the temp's lap, as they both colored in a drawing of a multicolored dragon. He had never seen her so comfortable, so completely at ease with a stranger. He cleared his throat, and Eleanor looked up, her expression calm, her smile unfaltering. "We were just charting a course to the dragon's lair," she said, her voice a gentle murmur. "Chloe is an excellent navigator." Marcus looked at his daughter, then back at Eleanor. He saw the genuine affection in her eyes, the patient kindness in her posture. This wasn't a paid-for service like his nannies provided. This was real. A complex cocktail of emotions swirled within him. Relief that Chloe was safe, gratitude for this woman's kindness, and a dawning, uncomfortable realization that his initial assessment of her in the cafe had been profoundly, embarrassingly wrong. "Thank you, Lena," he said, the words feeling clumsy and inadequate. It looks like you two are getting along. Chloe beamed up at him. Lena's my friend, she declared with the simple, unwavering conviction of a child. And as he looked at the quiet temp, who was now helping his daughter put her crayons away, Marcus felt the first, tentative shift in his perception. He was beginning to see that beneath the simple exterior was a woman of surprising depth and a quiet, unassuming grace. The Chloe incident was a turning point. Marcus could no longer see Lena as just a part of the office landscape. He began to seek her out, creating small reasons to interact with her. He'd ask for her input on a memo, feigning a need for a fresh pair of eyes, only to be genuinely impressed by her sharp, insightful edits. He started stopping by her desk in the mornings, and their conversations slowly deepened from polite work-related queries to something more personal. He learned about her love for classic novels, her surprising knowledge of historical architecture, and her quiet, steadfast belief in the power of building things that last. He found himself talking to her in a way he hadn't with anyone since his wife. He spoke of the immense pressure he was under, the loneliness of leadership, the constant struggle to be both a successful executive and a present father. She listened, not with pity, but with a quiet, empathetic understanding that made him feel truly heard. The guilt over the cafe incident gnawed at him. He saw now how his arrogant comment was not just a reflection of his own prejudices, but a symptom of the very corporate culture he was a part of. He knew he had to apologize, not just as a boss, but as a man. The opportunity arose late one evening. Most of the office had cleared out, leaving only the dedicated few, including Marcus and Eleanor, who was finishing up a project. He approached her desk, his hands in his pockets, a rare nervousness in his posture. Lena, he began, his voice lower than usual. Can I talk to you for a moment? She looked up from her computer, her expression neutral but attentive. I need to apologize, he said, getting straight to the point. A few weeks ago, at the cafe near here, I saw you, and I said something to my daughter. It was thoughtless, arrogant, and completely out of line. Eleanor's face remained impassive, but she held his gaze, letting him continue. I've felt terrible about it ever since, especially after getting to know you. There's no excuse for it, and I am genuinely sorry. The apology was direct and unflinching. There was no corporate spin, no attempt to minimize his mistake. It was the sincere regret of a man who knew he had been wrong. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the quiet hum of the building. Thank you for saying that, Marcus, she said finally, her voice soft. His shoulders relaxed in a wave of relief. To prove how sorry I am, he said, a tentative smile on his face. Would you let me buy you a real coffee? One that doesn't taste like it was brewed last Tuesday. A genuine smile touched her lips, reaching her eyes for the first time that night. I think I'd like that, she said. They left the silent office tower together and walked to a small, late-night coffee shop a few blocks away. The city lights glittered around them, but for the first time, it felt like the vast, intimidating space between their two worlds had shrunk to the size of a small, shared table. They talked for over an hour, about books, about dreams, about the funny things Chloe had said that week. It was easy, natural, and completely devoid of the power dynamics that defined their days. As they parted ways on the street corner, a new, unspoken understanding had formed between them. The boss and the temp were gone, replaced by two people who were beginning to see each other with a clarity that was both exciting and terrifying. Friday morning arrived with a palpable sense of anticipation. The entire executive floor was buzzing with nervous energy. Today was the day they would finally meet the mysterious new CEO who had acquired Vantage Tech. Marcus stood in the main boardroom, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. His mind was a battlefield. His professional life was on high alert, but his personal thoughts were consumed by Lena. Their coffee the night before had felt like a beginning, a fragile, hopeful start to something he couldn't yet define. He felt a connection to her that was as undeniable as it was professionally complicated. The chairman of the board, a portly man with a booming voice, called the room to order. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here, he began, a formal smile plastered on his face. As you know, this is a transformative moment for our company. It is my distinct honor to introduce you to a true visionary in the tech world, the new owner and chief executive officer of Vantage Tech. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ms. Eleanor Vance. The name registered as unfamiliar. A murmur of curiosity went through the room. The executives straightened in their seats, their faces a mixture of apprehension and expectation. The double doors at the end of the boardroom swung open. A woman walked in, her posture poised, her movements radiating a quiet, unshakable confidence. She was dressed in a simple but exquisitely tailored navy blue suit, her blonde hair styled in a sophisticated chignon. She was no longer Lena the temp. She was Eleanor Vance, and she was in charge. The room fell into a stunned silence. Jaws literally dropped. But no one was more shocked than Marcus. He stared at her, his mind struggling to reconcile the two images, the quiet, unassuming temp from the file room and the powerful, commanding presence now standing at the head of the table. The woman from the cafe. The woman who had fixed the server. The woman who had read stories to his daughter. The woman he had just had coffee with last night. They were all the same person, and she was his new boss. A cold dread washed over him, followed by a hot wave of humiliation. Every interaction they'd had replayed in his mind, now horrifically recontextualized. His smirk in the cafe, his patronizing apology, his confidences about his life, his daughter. He had laid himself bare to a woman who was, in all likelihood, evaluating him for termination. He felt like the world's biggest fool. Eleanor's gaze swept across the room, calm and assessing. She met the eyes of each executive, a silent acknowledgement of her new authority. Then, her eyes found Marcus. For a single, charged moment, their gazes locked. Her expression was completely unreadable. No triumph, no pity, no hint of their shared connection. There was only the cool, detached professionalism of a CEO addressing her team. The personal bomb had gone off, but she acted as if she hadn't even heard the explosion. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice clear and steady, betraying none of the history that was roiling just beneath the surface. "I'm Eleanor Vance. I believe we have a lot of work to do. Let's begin." The weeks following the reveal were the most professionally challenging of Marcus's life. The office was a hotbed of whispered gossip and speculation, but Eleanor governed with a serene and unshakable authority that quickly quashed any overt dissent. She was a force of nature, brilliant, decisive, and armed with a deep, intuitive understanding of the company's flaws and potential. For Marcus, every day was a walk on eggshells. He was drowning in a sea of humiliation and uncertainty. He threw himself into his work, producing the most meticulous, insightful reports of his career, all in a desperate attempt to prove his worth and, perhaps, to atone for his initial foolishness. He avoided her, keeping their interactions as brief and formal as possible. The easy warmth that had been growing between them was gone, replaced by a chasm of professional hierarchy and personal awkwardness. Eleanor, in turn, treated him with a cool, maddening professionalism. She never mentioned her week as Lena. She never alluded to their conversations or the incident in the cafe. She praised his work when it was excellent and challenged it when it was mediocre. She was simply his boss. This precise, impartial treatment was more torturous than any punishment. It left him in a constant state of limbo, never knowing if she despised him, pitied him, or had simply forgotten the man he had been to her. The breaking point came one evening when she called him into her office to review a new marketing initiative. The city lights glittered behind her, framing her in a halo of power. "This is a good start, Marcus," she said, sliding the proposal across her vast desk. "But it's safe. It's predictable. It's what this company has always done." He stood rigidly, his hands clasped behind his back. "It's a proven strategy." "I didn't acquire this company for its proven strategies," she countered, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "I acquired it for its potential. A potential I believe you are uniquely capable of unlocking. But not like this. Not by playing it safe." Her words were a direct challenge to his professional pride, but all he heard was a confirmation of his failure in her eyes. The weight of his embarrassment, of his unrequited feelings, of his impossible situation, became too much to bear. The next morning, he placed a single, sealed envelope on her desk before she arrived. It was his letter of resignation. He couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't work for her, love her, and live with the constant, crushing memory of his own foolishness. He was waiting for her in her office when she arrived, ready to make his case, to retreat with some semblance of dignity. She saw the letter, read it without a change in expression, and then looked at him. "You're running away," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm removing myself from an untenable position," he said stiffly. She stood up and walked around the desk until she was standing directly in front of him. "Marcus," she said, her voice losing its like edge and becoming something softer, something more familiar. "The man in the cafe who smirked at my lunch. He represented everything that is wrong with this company's culture. Arrogant, judgmental, and blind to the value of people right in front of him." He flinched, but she continued. "But the man who came back and apologized to a temp because it was the right thing to do. The man who loves his daughter more than anything. The man who possesses one of the most brilliant strategic minds I've ever encountered. That is the man I need to help me change this place." Her eyes were pleading, vulnerable for the first time. "I am not accepting your resignation. I am asking for your partnership. Don't run from your mistake. Help me build a company where that kind of mistake doesn't happen again." Her extraordinary offer of grace shattered his pride. She wasn't firing him. She was promoting him, in a way, to the role of her most trusted ally. He looked at her, at this incredible woman who saw not his failure, but his potential for redemption, and he knew he could not walk away. "Okay, Eleanor," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll stay." With the air cleared between them, a new dynamic began to form. They were no longer just boss and employee. They were partners, co-conspirators in the mission to reshape Vantage Tech. Marcus, freed from the weight of his shame, became Eleanor's most innovative and energetic lieutenant. He embraced her vision, and together, they began to dismantle the old, toxic culture and build something new, something better. The personal connection they had lost was slowly, cautiously rebuilt, this time on a foundation of mutual respect and shared purpose. But the unspoken feelings remained, a constant, humming undercurrent in their professional lives. The person who finally forced the issue was, unsurprisingly, Chloe. She missed Lena. She didn't understand the new formality, the closed office doors. "Why doesn't Lena read me stories anymore, Daddy?" she asked one night, her innocent question piercing Marcus's carefully constructed defenses. He realized that protecting his own heart was hurting his daughter's. He had to take a risk. He had to be brave. He organized a company picnic at a local park, a family-friendly event designed to boost morale. But his true motive was to create a neutral, relaxed space where he could talk to Eleanor, away from the charged atmosphere of the office. He found her sitting on a blanket, watching Chloe play on the swings. He sat down beside her, his heart pounding. He had brought a small, humble offering in a brown paper bag, a $5 sandwich. He handed it to her with a small, self-deprecating smile. "A peace offering," he said. She took it, a genuine, warm laugh bubbling up. "Is this your idea of a corporate merger?" "Something like that," he said, his expression turning serious. He took a deep breath. "Eleanor, I know our situation is unconventional, but I can't pretend anymore. I have feelings for you. Deep, real feelings that have nothing to do with you being my boss and everything to do with you being the most incredible woman I have ever met." Eleanor's smile faded, replaced by a look of profound, heart-stopping sincerity. "I came here to tell you that I love you," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "And I know that might complicate everything, but I had to tell you the truth." She looked at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, at the man who had humbled himself for her, who had become her partner, her friend. "Marcus," she whispered, her own feelings finally breaking through her carefully guarded exterior. "I love you too." The confession was a quiet explosion, a moment of pure, unadulterated truth that changed everything. Chloe, seeing them talking so seriously, ran over and threw her arms around both of them. "Group hug," she declared, her small body bridging the last remaining gap between them. They both laughed, pulling her into a tight embrace. In that moment, surrounded by the sounds of happy families and the warmth of a sunny afternoon, they weren't the COS of a tech giant. They were just a family, a strange, beautiful, and finally complete one. Their relationship was no longer a secret, but a quiet, respected fact within the company they were transforming together. The final barrier, the one of professional hierarchy, was the last to fall. It happened not with a grand romantic gesture, but with a strategic business decision that was, in itself, a profound declaration of love and trust. The board was pushing for international expansion, a move that would require one of them to relocate to London for at least a year. The assumption was that Marcus, as the subordinate, would be the one to go. But Eleanor had a different plan. She called a special meeting of the board. With Marcus sitting by her side, not knowing what she was about to do, she made her move. Vantage Tech's future is not about a single leader in a single location, she announced, her voice resonating with a calm authority. It's about a partnership. That is why, effective immediately, I am restructuring the executive leadership. I will remain as CEO, overseeing our global strategy from London. And I am promoting Marcus Thorne to the position of President of North American Operations. The board was stunned. She was essentially splitting her power, making him her equal on a continental scale. I trust him implicitly, she continued, looking directly at Marcus, her eyes conveying a message meant only for him. This company is in the best possible hands. Later that evening, in the quiet of her office, he confronted her. You didn't have to do that, Eleanor. Yes, I did, she said, her voice soft but firm. I told you I wanted a partner, not a subordinate. In everything. He looked at her, his heart so full of love and admiration he could barely speak. She hadn't just given him a promotion. She had given him the ultimate vote of confidence, making them true equals in every sense of the word. He walked over to her, taking her hands in his. He didn't have a ring, not yet. That would come later. For now, there was only this. You are, he said, his voice thick with emotion, the most extraordinary person I have ever known. She smiled, her eyes shining. And you, Marcus Thorne, are the man who showed me that it's possible to be both a brilliant leader and a good man. The kiss they shared was not one of tentative hope, but of solid, joyful certainty. It was the sealing of a partnership in work and in life, a promise of a future they would build together, as equals, as partners, as a family. 1 year later, the small cafe where a thoughtless smirk had once set their story in motion was the site of a quiet celebration. The tables were filled with their closest friends and colleagues, a happy, eclectic group that reflected the new, inclusive culture of the company they had built together. Eleanor, Marcus, and Chloe sat at the same window table where Eleanor had once eaten her $5 sandwich. Now, the table was laden with an assortment of pastries and a small, beautifully decorated cake. They were celebrating their first wedding anniversary. Eleanor, back from a successful year in London, was radiant, not in a power suit, but in a simple, elegant dress. Marcus, relaxed and happy, looked at his wife and daughter with a love so profound it was a tangible presence in the small cafe. Chloe presented them with a handmade card, a crayon drawing of the three of them holding hands, with the words "The Best Family" written in wobbly, 6-year-old script. As they laughed and shared stories, Eleanor looked at Marcus, a playful glint in her eye. You know, she said, I think this is the first time you've bought me lunch at this cafe where I haven't secretly been your boss. He chuckled, taking her hand. And it's the first time I've been here where I haven't been a complete fool. I'd say we're both making progress. Their journey had been a lesson in humility, grace, and the courage to see beyond first impressions. The rich dad who had smirked at the broke girl had learned that true value has nothing to do with the price of a meal. And the undercover boss had learned that the best partnerships are built not on power, but on mutual respect and a shared vision for a better world. As they left the cafe, hand in hand, with Chloe skipping happily between them, they were not the CEO and the president, or the boss and the subordinate. They were just Eleanor and Marcus, a family forged in the most unexpected of circumstances, a love story that had started with a quiet judgment and ended with a loud, joyful, and ever-expanding love. If the story of Eleanor and Marcus reminded you that first impressions aren't always the last word, and that true partnership is built on respect and second chances, then you've found your community here at Heart-Wrenching Stories. We believe that everyone has the capacity for growth, and that love can be found in the most unexpected places. Show your support by hitting that hype button, subscribing, and ringing the notification bell for more tales that challenge our perspectives and warm our hearts. Let us know in the comments what you think about their unconventional journey. Thank you for watching, and remember to always look beyond the surface.